Welcome back to the Deep Digger Sports Pod. I'm your host, Drew. My other host, right over there.
What's up? It's D. Good to see you again. Be sure to hit that like button. Be sure to drop some comments. Let us know your thoughts. And more importantly, subscribe because we are talking college football, baby.
And a lot of good games yesterday. The biggest one that we were hyping up going into the week did not disappoint. A&M versus LSU. I believe LSU was leading for a while, and then A&M just went crazy on defense.
Yeah, no, 100% hand up. I was wrong. I thought Nussmeier and his quarterback play was going to be able to guide LSU to a win at Kyle Field. And honestly, for the first half, I was right. I was 100% right because that momentum was all LSU. The Tigers were moving up and down the field. They missed 2 field goals and they were still up by, I believe, 10 going into half. But then that Texas A&M defense, this was a huge showcase for 2 things for Texas A&M. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and say 3 things. 3 things. 1, they have a championship level defense. That defense went after Nussmeier, made him do stupid things that he normally won't do. They had him spin out of the pocket. He was rolling. He was trying to make plays happen with his legs and throwing down the field. He's just not that guy. You got to know who you are. Know the name on the back of your jersey. Know who you are. You don't need to be a hero. And that's what he threw 3 picks in the second half. The second thing that they showcased is that home field advantage is crazy. Once that crowd actually got into it in the second half, they were rocking and they had the entire LSU team shook. And the third thing is they need to make the permanent switch to Marcel Reed at quarterback. I know everyone was like, oh, but Connor Wigman went to the bench and then he figured it out. And now he adds a different element of passing. Marcel Reed was electric, and him coming in, just once he came in, they've never looked back. They never left their foot off the gas, and they smashed LSU at that second half.
Yeah, something I've been saying all season is I'm not a Nussmeier believer. I was trying to tell you, I just don't think he has the talent to really compete in the SEC. And he's played well. He's played within the offense, but like you're saying, Marcel Reed elevates the A&M offense to a whole nother level that Wegman just can't get to. And that defense it's shown us all year. It's really solid. And yesterday it looked elite with the home field advantage. And this A&M team is real right now. They're sitting at the top of the SEC. I, I kind of want to take a look at the rest of their schedule because could they end up falling at the end here in the SEC championship race?
I think they have South Carolina, they have, I believe, New Mexico, and then they end with Texas.
Yeah, that Texas game is huge, and we could talk about Texas a little bit because they are coming back down to earth now that they're playing some real squads, coming off of the loss to Georgia, and then Vandy. They
Hold on,
really struggled.
before we move on to Texas, I think I'm not gonna. I'd hate to be that overreaction guy, but Texas A&M did just stamp their ticket to the college football playoff. The rest of that schedule, it plays perfectly into them. They are the only undefeated team right now in conference play in the SEC. And they have a chance to be undefeated if they take care of business. And who knows? It's the SEC. You can drop a game. We've seen it before. But I think they just stamped their ticket to being undefeated heading into that matchup with Texas. And Georgia still has Tennessee, I believe, left to play. And they have a couple of games. Texas obviously has still a couple of games at the SEC, but I think Texas A&M could go into this, and even if they lose to Texas, they still have a spot in the SEC championship game, and I think they still have a spot in the college football playoff if they drop that game. I'm going to go ahead and I'm stamping their ticket to the college football playoff.
I fully agree, and I'd even argue that I think they have a shot at winning the whole thing this year. The way that there's been a lot of parity right now at the top. Oregon, yeah, they're looking great. Ohio State looks like they're beatable. They should have lost this week to Nebraska. Texas, we've seen their flaws. They're struggling against Vandy this yesterday. I think that it's wide open right now for an A&M team to sneak into the top and possibly depending on what the matchups they get in those initial rounds of the playoffs, they could go all the way.
Yeah, the one thing that's going to get them down the stretch of the playoff is not having a home field advantage because it's a neutral site for those games for the later rounds. So That's going to be tough because that is a huge advantage for them. Once that crowd got into it, the crowd was rocking. You can see the cameras for ESPN bouncing up and down with the crowd. It was intense. And so that's the one thing. And you got to shore up. Like, I'm so sick and tired of the back and forth Connor Wegman, Marcel Reed. I think you make the switch permanent. You just go ahead and say, hey, we have a better chance. And I know realistically what Mike Elko is going to say. Connor Wegman has put in his time. Connor Wegman give us a better chance, a better dynamic passing the ball. But realistically, we've seen that Marcel Reed can make those passes, but also he does so many more things with his legs. And I think that's what you need for this team specifically.
Even Bama benched Jalen Hurts when they had Tua. So it's not
Yeah.
unheard of to bench a quarterback to try to go for a chip. Um, let's talk about Texas now.
Yeah.
They struggled to score and get up the field against this Vandy team. And I know the score is probably closer than what the score was going towards the end of this one. But did that game concern you? Like, Pavia didn't even play a great game. He had 2 interceptions, threw for 143, and just it didn't feel like Texas in a game that I thought they were going to bounce back. I thought it was going to be a blowout win. They just really couldn't go and get it going on offense.
That's true. I mean, realistically, this Vandy team is kind of a toss-up team where they already have confidence. They've gone against Missouri and they almost beat them in double OT. They went and they did beat Tennessee, so they have confidence. They know they could swing with the big boys in this conference. And so I think that's what you've seen on the field, a team that had a lot of confidence going into it, a why not mentality, and they kind of stuck around and they stayed dangerous. Texas, you got to be concerned. You got to be like looking at the rest of your schedule. And I'm not sure. Let's look at their schedule really quick because I can't remember what it looks like going forward. I think they still have some really tough games. Am I right?
I believe they do,
So I
and
got
that's
it.
the
It
start to
is,
question like the fans too. At one point, if you drop another game, are you just saying, "Are we're going Quinn Ewers the rest of the way, no matter what," or do you start to look at Arch?
well, I think what's saving that controversy right now is the fact that Sark went to Arch in that Georgia game. And Arch just looked like a freshman quarterback. Arch just did not look electric at all. He did not add a bump to this team. Instead, he just kind of went out there and looks just as bad, maybe a little bit worse than Quinn. And so you don't have that in the bag with the fans. Like, oh, okay, put in Arch and we're going to be so much better. They know, like, realistically, the problem wasn't Quinn Ewers or Arch Manning. It was that offensive line against that Georgia team. And
So
so
Texas has Florida, Arkansas, Kentucky, then A&M. I think this is a dangerous schedule for Texas because Arkansas is not going to back down, Kentucky is not going to back down, and then you have a tough game against A&M. It could get ugly for this Texas team potentially if they don't start to pull it together.
yeah, if they don't start figuring things out, and and this is a Florida team that has just stuck around. Like I fired Billy Napier in week 2. Like, you know what I mean? I had
Yeah.
him fired early on in the season, but they're finding ways to continue to get wins. They're not as bad as everyone thought, and I think realistically, if you kind of have an off day, they can go out there and put some numbers up on you. I mean, Lagway has shown that he is a guy at Florida, so I just think you gotta be cautious, you gotta be careful moving forward. If you are Texas, tread lightly, but I mean, you gotta get it figured out. I think it starts offensively. Once you start to get rolling there, the rest of your team will move like as such, but it's gonna be tough sledding. It is gonna be. It's a sneaky tougher schedule than it looks on paper.
Yeah, and then just to round out the SEC talk, Ole Miss beat Oklahoma. Oklahoma's 4-4. They're done. Jackson Arnold, I just believe he's not the guy. But Ole Miss, on the other end, I didn't think they looked amazing. Like, I think there was points of the game where I was frustrated. I was like, this is the same old Lane Kiffin. Like, this guy is not going to get this team back to the top. I think they were just overrated to start the year, and like middle of the pack in the rankings is where they're going to fall.
Yeah, I mean, this is an Oklahoma team that they've just fired their offensive coordinator. They made Jackson Arnold play because he told them before, I don't want to play meaningless football. If we're just going to do this, redshirt me. But they already burned his red shirt, so they have to play him at this point because they went to Hawkins, and Hawkins just can't throw the ball. So they did it out of just like sheer necessity. And so I just don't think that one, obviously now they don't have an offensive coordinator and it didn't look like they had an offensive identity and they're going to continue to be aimless the rest of the year. And two, yeah, there's everyone says that Oklahoma has a great defense. I don't think so. I don't think that they had the horses this year. I think what they were banking on was being better offensively. And so is this an impressive win for me from Ole Miss? No, it's not. You had a team that was pretty much on fire and you went out there and you still struggled a little bit. You ended up pulling away at the end, but it took some time to get there.
Yeah, I want to talk more, but did you see that at the Vanderbilt game they had construction workers during the game watching in
Oh my
in the
god.
construction site? They're just like hanging over the side of the field watching the game.
No, I didn't see that.
They're like, I bet you they went just to watch the game. Like they did not plan on working that day.
I'll work weekends. Let's do it.
Sorry, babe. I gotta go. I gotta go to the game. I'm building a new field there. All right. Well,
That's ridiculous.
something that stood out this week, which I wasn't a big Big 12 guy. I know you were big on this conference this year, but the Big 12 and the ACC are making names for themselves this season. You have Miami still going. SMU probably should have lost the game to Duke, but they win that one. And was it SMU? Pittsburgh. They're also undefeated. They blow out Syracuse. BYU in the Big 12. Colorado, I believe, got the win. Kansas State in a stunner with Kansas. That's 6 teams right there that could potentially, maybe not Colorado, but could potentially get in the playoffs. Are we getting 3 ACC schools into the playoffs?
No, I don't think so. I think towards the end of this year, we are going to see them start to dwindle down. I think that Clemson's going to be in it. I think Miami's going to be in it. And actually, we might get 3
And then
because
BYU's in right now. Kansas State should be climbing up pretty close. And then
hold on.
Colorado
Did you
should be
say
ranked.
ACC or Big 12?
We're talking about both of them.
Okay. I think there's only going to be one Big 12 team realistically that gets in. I think that the conference has been so up and down and they're eating each other alive so much that if you spread it over the course of the season, that they're not going to be, it's not going to look as impressive as people once thought. Like Utah just completely crumbled. Oklahoma State completely crumbled. You have these conferences that like Kansas State, realistically, if they don't win the conference, I am not putting them in because they have had such an up and down season. If they are not the conference winner, I'm not doing that. So I think there's only one unless BYU or Iowa State loses. Then I think you put 2 in, but it's like, who do you knock out? Because as we're starting to move through this, like it's going to be really, really tough to start picking out ACC or the 2 of the ACC teams. It's going to be tough to pick out the Big 10 teams, the SEC. It's going to be tough to start kicking those out. And then you still have the vulture in Notre Dame that keeps winning games and keeps winning games and keeps winning games despite them losing early in the season and people being like, we can't put them in. You're going to have to put them in. They're ranked so high and they continuously only have 1 loss that they're going to be a problem.
And then if Boise State wins the Mountain West, do you go Boise State or maybe a 2-loss BYU or a 2-loss Iowa State? Like they have to go in. So who's getting out? I think they're running out of space for these Big 10 schools even because the ACC, they potentially could have 3 undefeateds.
Yeah.
And
It's going to be
what do you do from
crazy.
there?
I think that's going to be a complete shit show as far as.
And then didn't you see there's a scenario where the SEC could have like 8 schools with 1 loss?
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's like so many nightmare scenarios for this playoff race that are getting more and more closer to being real right now.
Well, and then think about this, okay? Army.
Yeah.
I know we just I appreciate your service. Navy just went down to Notre Dame. Army still remains undefeated. Army's taking on Notre Dame. If they knock off Notre Dame and they go on to win the American Conference, they are ranked and they're going to be ranked pretty high. Like Do you take that? Do you leave them out? Like, you're gonna have to take someone else out. Like, they're just gonna be spot stealing. It's like the NCAA tournament. It's you got bid stealers by winning the conference.
Yeah, and that brings up a kind of cool idea is just like we have the NIT, should we have a playoff for the bottom, like the top 13 to 24 who didn't make the playoff? And let's get an NIT going for college football.
And then I gotta hear, oh, we're the real national champion. If we would have been in the tournament, we would have went we would have taken it all. No, I don't want to hear that. I mean, you have bowl games. Go ahead and do your bowl game.
I mean, it's crazy. So the ACC, SMU, we watched the end of that game. Duke should have won.
Electric.
You thought it was pass interference on that final 2-point conversion. I thought it
Yeah,
was
I did.
I thought it was
He was
clean.
draped all over him in the end zone. It was pretty ridiculous. I thought it was pass interference, but hey, that's just me. But SMU continues to roll. Next week they have Pitt, I believe, right?
Yeah, that's gonna be a huge that might be my favorite game of the week going in.
They are running into a buzzsaw. That is Pitt has a defense that is as insane. They made Kyle McCord look like a pedestrian. They just ran him over all over the field on I believe it was what Thursday? Thursday? Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And the thing is, the quarterback for SMU, he had thrown 2 interceptions all season. He threw 3 in this last game, and he fumbled the ball, I believe, 3 times, fumbling it at the end where they should have hit a game-winning field goal, but the kicker gets blocked. He missed 2 field goals and an extra point that game for Duke. So that should have been lost. They've been playing a dangerous game all season that they've been borderline about to lose. I think it all comes to fruition against Pitt. Pitt looks like
yeah.
they're hitting on all cylinders. And then Kansas State in a close one with I thought they should have lost this one too. I thought they didn't deserve the win here. But Avery Johnson, he just keeps on winning. He 253, 2 touchdowns. They had a lot from their run. He even ran for 67 yards and a touchdown. What do they got left? They have Cincinnati, Arizona. They play Iowa State in their last game, so that's going to be really the deciding game.
Mm. See, I'm not a big Avery Johnson guy. I think that Avery Johnson is just too hot and cold for me. I think that when it comes down, like when push comes to shove, like if they go up against a actual contender, Avery Johnson will fold.
Yeah, we'll see. And then I really want to talk about Indiana. What do you
Yes.
think about Indiana? Because their quarterback goes down, right?
Yep.
He's out for a few
Rourke
weeks.
out.
I think everyone was underestimating this defense because it started to really kind of count them out. Not necessarily count them out, but the odds were not really going that this was going to be a big win for Indiana. And I think it was kind of like, oh, upset alert here. They could fall off. And I think people have been waiting for them to get that first loss, but they just keep winning. And now looking at this team, I think they could beat Ohio State, who should have lost this week to Nebraska.
Yeah, no, I texted you that. Like, hey, do you think Indiana is gonna beat Ohio State? Because they just looked so poor on Saturday. It was ridiculous. And Indiana just looked like they did not miss a beat whatsoever. And that is such a rare thing when you lose your starting quarterback and you continue to dominate. And that's like what they're doing. Coach Signetti just has this team ready to go. They ran the rock really well. Realistically, their quarterback only had 11 completions and they still blew their doors off of them. So I'm convinced that and it's not this week. I believe it's in 2 weeks that they're taking on Ohio State, and their starting quarterback should be back. So
And everyone is kind of speculating that if they beat Ohio State, the job for Ohio State is Signetti's.
yeah, I'm
So
hearing that buzz as well.
do you think it's a smart move for him to switch over? Because I feel like Indiana doesn't carry the expectations of Ohio State, and you can probably do well in recruiting now that you're this highly ranked, and you're still going to be in the playoffs regardless. Like it's not like back in the day where, well, you have to have big wins, you have to have a big name to like be able to sway the voters to get into the national championship. Now you can be a one loss, almost win the conference, and get into the playoffs. You just have to be top 12. So I think he's in a good spot here.
Yeah, but the only thing is the resources available to you at Ohio State are tremendously like more than at Indiana. Because if we're going to be completely honest, Indiana is a basketball school. Indiana is truly a basketball school. Like in 49 other states, it's just basketball, but this is Indiana. Like, you know what I mean? And so you're always going to have that in the back of your mind when you are coaching there. Like, okay, I know our program is doing this and doing that, but realistically, if their roles were reversed and we were asked and the basketball team was going for national championships, they would love that a lot more. And so take it to Ohio State, which is kind of like, it's a football school and they will pump money into it. We see that they have, I believe they have the biggest stadium of all of college sports. They just invest so much more into their football team and they will, like, if you need to go get a guy, they will go get a guy for you. They will pay him whatever. You have that in your background. Like, okay, we're Ohio State. We win national championships. We get guys to the NFL. You can't say the same thing about Indiana
Yeah,
historically.
yeah. And for the Ohio State, I want to talk a little bit about Nebraska because Dylan Raiola came in with so much hype. Everyone's talking about he's baby Mahomes. This guy has not been good this year, like at all.
Yeah.
And they get blown out by Indiana last week. They in a close one against Ohio State, they're throwing picks in the red zone. They're going 3 and out at the 1. He doesn't even throw a touchdown pass. His wins are against Rutgers and Purdue. Like, was the hype too real too fast for this guy?
He blew out Colorado. Let's go ahead and note that. Let's say that.
That was before Colorado knew what they were this year. Like, that's when they're still putting the pieces together.
But it still happened. It's
Okay.
on his record.
That was a while
Uh
ago. That was a while ago.
no, it's been bad so far. I think obviously he's gonna get better. Uh and I heard someone was talking about this when they faced off against Indiana actually. And it was like, you got to be pissed. Like, if you're Nebraska and you're like, okay, we got the coach, we have the quarterback, and now it's already year 3, I believe, in this rule era. And we're still kind of the same team. We haven't improved very much. There's like light at the end of the tunnel. We could see it. But then we're getting dog walked by Indiana, who's come in with year 1 coach and a whole new team. And they're just automatically, they're going to go out and make the playoffs. You got to be pissed. Like, you got to be looking at them envious. Like, that should be us. That should be me. And so, yeah, you got to be disappointed with the way things are going for this season. You've got to be like, okay, well, what is going to change moving forward? Because we thought we had everything we needed to compete this year, and we just are not. So you get one more year, but we got to be in the playoff hunt. Like, if we're talking about like 20 teams, 30 teams that are in playoff contention, if you like do some math and some mental gymnastics, you can kind of make it work. And we're not part of that team. We're not part of those 30 teams in this country. So we need to figure it out and we need to get to that point next year. If not, we're lopping heads.
Yeah, and it's reminding me a little bit of like Justin Herbert in the NFL, where everyone is hyping him off his talent and not really what he's produced on the field. And like, yeah, Rayola, he could be have the talent that Mahomes, like he could do all these things, but he's not doing it on the field. And then you're banking on him so much and he just hasn't produced. But all you're banking on him so much, you've already signed his brother to come play
Yeah.
for you guys. And so not to say that they're the same person, but you're committing to so many more years of Rayola here, and it's not really translating onto the field into production and especially into wins.
Yeah, 100%. Very similar to, again, Nico in Tennessee, where a guy was super hyped, and now we've seen him against real competition, and we're like, oh, pump the brakes. Like, let's see. Well, realistically, they're being carried by their defense, where Nebraska doesn't have that. Nebraska has walk-ons still that work their way up and are fifth-year seniors and are going out there and overachieving. You don't have the horses to be Tennessee right now. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and then if you look at a guy like Jake Retzlaff from BYU, he was projected the worst quarterback in the conference before this season. And he just took that mentality and he's just been a dog all year. They were actually underdogs this week against UCF for some reason.
Yeah, that was weird. We were both
That was
asking, like, what's going on?
easiest
Because
money I could have cashed this year. It was taking them as dogs against UCF.
That was so weird. I don't know what people were thinking or why it was swung that way, but they went out there and they took care of business. It didn't even look like at any point they were in danger. So
Yeah. And then I think this is the week Tennessee was off, right?
I believe so.
And Georgia. So I think this was like perfect weeks for them to kind of sit back and let pieces fall around them, and they could jump back up into the rankings a little bit. Do you
Yeah,
have
let me
any other
see.
games? Any other games you want to talk about?
I believe. Oh, we got to talk Boise State UNLV. This was
Yeah,
a
that was a
fun
great
game.
game. Great game.
This was such a fun game. Ashton Genty goes down. He ends up coming back. They said he had an off game. He still ran for a, what, like 120,
128.
130? Yeah.
120.
So, but it was a back and forth shootout. It showed that one, how good UNLV is, because UNLV is a really solid team. And maybe in another year, they could still sneak into the playoff. But this year, with so much at the top and so much fighting amongst the top Big Ten and SEC teams, they're just going to be left out, which kind of sucks. But two, it showed how resilient Boise State is, and they're not just Ashton Genty merchants. Maxon Madsen actually is a quarterback, and he used both his arm talent and sneaky. He has some wheels.
Yeah. There was so many instances where they were like, "Well, you have to give the ball to Genty here." And they're like, "Nope, we're throwing the ball." And he made the right decision. He looked great. He actually had two of the biggest runs of the night. And he just looked like a stone cold killer out there. Like he was gonna get the job done. And that's not to take away from Hodge over at
Yeah,
UNLV. Like this kid is producing. I think he was struggling a little bit in the passing, but his run game, he was just willing that team to first downs and willing them to touchdowns. So both, I feel like it sucked that one team had to lose in this game because both of them, I felt like deserved it. Both of them put it all on the field, and it was exciting for everyone to watch.
yeah, such a fun game, and we'll see moving forward what the path looks like. But Boise State continues to be that team that is going to be on everyone's radar moving forward, because
And
if they make it to the playoff, like that is going to be a team that people are going to be like, oh, fuck,
and like you
we got to
said
face them.
about Genty, them saying he had a down game, I actually did think he had a down game. Like, yes, he put up 128, but if you watched the game and not just look at the box score, they were shutting him down for most of that game. It was tough sledding, and then he gets tackled. He posts his arm, and I thought his arm was broken. That like usually when you post your arm and fall like that, your elbow's gone, but he just taped it up, went back out there. I haven't seen any injury stuff of what if it's lingering, but he should be fine. But yeah, I wanted him to really just have a crazy explosive game where he really solidifies himself in the Heisman race. But I think he still did enough to be the front runner.
He is not anymore. As of yesterday, they switched the odds, and he was second, and Cam Ward was first. Cam Ward, obviously, they blow out Florida State.
I don't think
I
Cam
like
Ward
Cam
deserves it.
Ward, but I don't think he deserves the Heisman. I think what Ashton Genty is doing is just out of this world. He should continue to be the Heisman front runner. But we know how these voters are. I mean, realistically, it's a bunch of people that don't watch ball. So
And then it's hard to watch for them to watch Boise State ball, especially if you're on the East Coast. The time difference, and then they don't get primetime games. That's why I wanted Ashton Genty needed to go for like 200 something yesterday because it was a game that people could watch. Like it
yeah,
wasn't in the mix of all the games in the morning. It wasn't necessarily
it was
prime time.
Friday. It was Friday.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But it necessarily wasn't prime time, but it was like within the vicinity of a primetime game.
Yeah. So that just sucks. And I think he has to go out there and just be unreal the rest of the season, because even with the down game, it was still a pretty solid game from a guy
I
who done real things.
I saw one argument where they were like, "Well, he doesn't deserve it because Barry Sanders' worst game, his Heisman year, was 150 yards." And they're like, "I'm like, dude, that's Barry Sanders, and he still put up 128." Like, we're not saying he was like, "Oh, well, Derrick Henry's best game that year was, our worst
Yeah.
game was 110 yards." Like, I don't think there's an argument against him really. I think it's just an argument for the other guys. Like Travis Hunter, I would be okay with him winning it, but he needs to continue to put up big numbers. because
Yeah.
Genti's gonna do the same.
Yeah, and again, if you're gonna that's the one thing that Cam Ward defenders and Cam Ward enthusiasts would say is like, okay, well, if you're gonna knock Cam Ward for beating these trash teams, he's in a better conference than the Mountain West. So if you're gonna say that, then you got to downplay what Ashton Genty is doing against the Mountain West. And I see that. I see that argument.
Yeah, we'll see. I think it's gonna come down. Can they win the Mountain West, and can Miami win the ACC? Like that's I think gonna be telling, because then you can have another big game at the end of it. But that's all we got for today. Make sure you subscribe, please. Like, comment. We'll see you next time.
Later.
See you.